Hello everybody, yes, how are we all doing? It is the Freders93 here and welcome back to another edition of Football with Fredders, the weekly football chat and discussion show here on the channel. Now I mentioned this briefly the other week when we were looking at the European Super League news and all that, particularly with the way that the German clubs are run and that sort of thing. There's been a little bit of a discussion about possibly us over here in England and in the UK implementing something similar to Germany's 50+1 rule, but it's going to make a lot of people think, what exactly is the 50+1 rule that Germany has? Well, here we're going to talk about it, and I'm going to fill you in with the details. I've taken this from the Bundesliga page from an article they did on this a few years ago. You're more than welcome to look this up yourself, of course, but I'm just going to go over the document, and then, well, I say the document, the article, and then I'll talk about it. So the first things that come up is a quote. The German Spectator traditionally has close ties with his club. These are quotes from the CEO of Borussia Dortmund, Hans-Joachim Watzke, in 2016. And if he gets the feeling that he is no longer regarded as a fan instead of a customer, we'll have a problem. This is where it's obviously talking about sort of more like these foreign owners, so more the owners of certain clubs caring seemingly more about profit than they do about the fans themselves, which is a point that a lot of people made with regards to the European Super League. But basically, the 50+1 rule should quintessentially guard against this. In short, it means that clubs, and by extension the fans, so this is all but the fans, hold a majority of their own voting rights. Under the German Football League rules, or the DFL rules, football clubs will not be allowed to play in the Bundesliga if commercial investors have more than a 49% stake. In essence, this means that private investors cannot take over clubs and potentially push through measures that prioritise profit over the wishes of supporters. The ruling simultaneously protects against reckless owners and safeguards the democratic customs of German clubs. So we've seen in the UK sort of the cases with the ownership of like the Venky's ruling with Blackburn Rovers, what's been happening with Bolton Wanderers, that sort of thing, like the club's been sort of really going down the footballing ladders and are just getting into a real sort of financial mess, or in Bury's case, just having to completely be wiped out and have to start again completely. Historically, German teams were not-for-profit organisations run by members' associations, and until 1998, private ownership of any kind was prohibited. The 50+1 rule, which was introduced that year, helps explain why debts and wages are under control and why ticket prices remain so low compared to the other major leagues in Europe. As Hans-Joachim earlier argued, the upshot of the system is that the fans are usually not taken for granted. So fans definitely have a lot more of a say when it comes to sort of like how the club is run and what basically goes on with the club and with all that in Germany. And basically it mentions sort of like why there's no real club sort of like dominating over the other in terms of like the wage brackets and things like that. Maybe potentially you could argue with obviously Bayern Munich and Borussia Dortmund because of the players they have, but it's also like kept at a reasonable sort of level, and becoming a member of one of these clubs is actually semi-decent money. It's like only £60 a year apparently for an FA Cup membership. Might I get into that? I don't know. Time will have to tell. And then we've got some more bits from him here. The 50+1 rule does significantly more good than harm in Germany. This is what Hans-Joachim, as I'm just going to call him, as I'm not going to try and pronounce his surname anymore, told Sportbild before suggesting that most prospective private investors would primarily be motivated by profits. Most clubs won't get a Roman Abramovich, who in the first place wants to see Chelsea winning. Most of the investors want to earn money. And where do they get it from? The spectators. And that's very much the case. Particularly with the Big Six in England, of course, money talks, doesn't it? It's the only reason why those Big Six would have had anything to do with the European Super League in the first place, and we are so glad that failed. But then we're about talking to one or two sort of like special cases and sort of more like exemptions with this rule. The two main ones in particular from the beginning will be Bayer Leverkusen and Wolfsburg. So Bayer Leverkusen and Wolfsburg are two special cases in the Bundesliga, based on the fact that investors who have had an interest in a club for more than 20 years can apply for an exemption from the 50+1 rule. Why is that, I hear you ask? Well, Bayer Leverkusen were founded in 1904 by the employees of the German pharmaceutical Bayer, who are based in the city of Leverkusen. So that's sort of like how they can get their connection with that there, and in turn their exemptions with the 50+1 rule. Then also Wolfsburg, because they're affiliated with the local auto works Volkswagen. They were founded in 1905, just 7 years after the city itself was created to house Volkswagen workers busy assembling the famous Beetle or People's Car. So Volkswagen basically setting themselves up in Wolfsburg, and this team mainly been setting up as a thing for them. That's how they could apply for exemption with that, especially as they set up in 1905. But then most recently there have been challenges. Well, I say most recently, about two. This is going quite a few years back, because the article I'm reading from is 4 years old. But so let's just say in the last 10 to 12 years, there have been challenges for the 50+1 ruling. In 2009, hearing aid magnate and the president of Hanover, Martin Kind, probably Kind, as it's German, sought to overturn it, but 32 of the other 35 professional clubs voted against the proposal. 3 abstained, and following the vote by clubs in the German first and second tier, the DFL president, Dr. Reinhard Rubal, expressed his satisfaction. Now these are going to be the quotes from him. The Bundesliga is remaining true to its principles and maintaining its reliance on the factors which have made a decisive contribution to the success of the professional game in Germany in recent decades: stability, continuity, and proximity to fans. However, that was also the same year where RB Leipzig were found, where of course Red Bull rebranded the team in the fifth tier of German football, Markranstadt. They then, obviously, we now know they've climbed up the ladders into the Bundesliga. Were runners-up in the 2016-17 season. They made the semi-finals, I believe this was, in the 1920 season. Don't quote me on that. I'm fairly sure they made semi-final though. Very, very sure they did. But while thousands of Bayern Munich's 290,000 members were eligible to vote to re-elect Ula Hoeneß as club president in 2016, for example, a mere handful, all employees of the parent company, are afforded the same privilege at Leipzig. Seemingly their way around the 50+1 rule was the fact that they made sort of like their employees or something like that part of the 50%, like some of those members that you would need to have the 50% of shares plus one. Another exemption was agreed upon in December 2014, where the software billionaire Dimitar Hupp was given the green light to take majority control of Hoffenheim after investing consistently over 2 decades. Crucial in the assessment of Hoffenheim's request was that for more than 20 years, Dietmar Hupp has provided considerable financial support to both the professional as well as the amateur teams of the club. This is what a DFL statement read sort of in December 2014 when all this agreement happened in Hoffenheim. Kind, the most recent to seek an exemption, has now backed Hanover for over 20 years. Having first been appointed president in 1997, he became eligible to apply for special treatment in 2017, and he may have actually taken a controlling interest in the club. I can't say I would know 100% for certain because I never looked that much more into this, obviously, after this report. Remember, this report was about 4 years ago. Maybe this did happen, maybe this didn't. A couple of more points here. With foreign owners pumping billions into other leagues, some other German clubs also feel that a change is required in order to stay competitive on a global level. The CEO of Bayern Munich at the time, Karl-Heinz Rummenigge, said he felt it should be left to each club to decide if they open the door to outside investment. But others favour the retention of a ruling that has helped to fill stadia and create a memorable matchday experience. I've been able to experience a Bundesliga game at the Rhein-Energiestadion in Köln, and you can tell how much the city of Köln cares about that team. It was an amazing atmosphere there. It was great fun to be there, and it's pretty much why I've adopted them as my team, which you could pretty much have just guessed because of the fact I have the FC career mode on the channel. Heinz-Joachim told Sportbild that he never wanted to see German fans be milked for money as is happening in England. Praise for the rule hasn't just come from within Germany though. At the opening of the 41st DFB Congress in 2013, former UEFA president Michel Platini singled out the Bundesliga model as a golden standard. While the rest of Europe has boring leagues, half-empty stadia and clubs on the verge of bankruptcy, German football is in remarkable health. It's definitely something that should seriously be looked at in England. I think it would help certainly make leagues a bit more fairer. This is all, of course, coming from someone whose current owner is trying to get through a takeover by the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia, but that's neither here nor there at the minute. This is a scheme that could really be beneficial to those in England. Might help sort of like regain and maybe, I wouldn't say rebuild some of the finances to them in England, but definitely give the fans more of a feel that they can have a bit more of a say and a bit more of an involvement in what happens with their club. And so I would definitely back something like this. That is going to do it for this week on Football Threaders. Thank you so much for watching. Really do hope you have enjoyed it. Leave that like, subscribe if you're new, follow social media, follow on Twitch, because remember, it's Wednesday, so we're going to stream tonight. And I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye bye for now.